What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and it's pretty much rankings week over on the channel here on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I dropped my first, attempt at redraft rankings for 2023. It's early June. We're still kind of flying blind here with like the Dalvin Cook news, and you got DeAndre Hopkins, a lot of places that aren't completely settled yet. So it's a hard exercise, and I kind of wanted to put my thoughts down into paper and talk to you guys about how I see the positional landscapes. We talked about running back yesterday. I figured we'd switch it up and we'd talk through our top 15 to 16 quarterbacks. Again, the entire rankings have like top 90 wide receivers, top 65 running backs, 30 quarterbacks, 30 tight ends, all on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to go below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Now, for this quarterback tier list, by the way, when he's in the back, absolutely slumped back there. But when we talk about quarterbacks for this video, we have to understand that this is going to be for 4-point passing leagues. And I feel much stronger about the tiers than the rankings within each tier. If you want to have guys flip swap, especially with this top tier, there's 3 quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. You can have them ordered however you please. But for me personally, I'm going to have Josh Allen as my QB1 overall. Again, we're splitting hairs here. And I know that he finished as the QB3 last year, so it's like, Ron, why are we putting Josh Allen at QB1 again? And this is kind of what it comes down to. Josh Allen has been so consistent these past 3 years. He has had over 35 passing touchdowns. He had 24.2 points per game last year, which would have been a QB1 finish if Mahomes and Jalen Hurts weren't playing out of their minds last year, right? Jalen Hurts with like 13 rushing touchdowns, Mahomes with like over 5,000 passing yards. Allen was still that guy, just 0.4 points per game off of his QB1 overall season last year in 2021. And that was on top of suffering like a UCL strain where he screwed up his elbow pretty bad against the Jets mid-season, and he was still an absolute horse. So what it comes down to for me with Josh Allen is he's kind of the best of both worlds when you're looking at Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. He can give you a decent chunk of that Jalen Hurts rushing upside, right, where he's like passing 700 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns on the rushing game in the last 2 years. And then also he's getting there through pass volume, where he's been over like 4,000 passing yards, over 35 passing touchdowns each of the last 3 years. He's probably the only quarterback, to me, or I would say he has the best chance among all quarterbacks to just turn in an absolutely insane year of like 40-plus passing touchdowns, 10-plus rushing touchdowns, just otherworldly type fantasy performance. The floor has been there. If we just look over the last 3 years, he has the highest points per game, since 2021. So this is just the last 2 years. Josh Allen has the highest points per game, 25.1 points per game in that span. Mahomes and Hurts chilling out at about 23. So again, Allen was the QB3 last year, but he gave you 24.2 points per game, which is just absolutely insane. Like that is Allen's lowest points per game over the last 3 years has been higher than Mahomes and Hurts 2 years average here, which is just absolutely insane. He might get more help in the form of DeAndre Hopkins here. Give me Josh Allen up top. Then after that, we have Mahomes in our QB2 spot here. And he proved to everybody last year that, was kind of sleeping on Mahomes. We weren't really sleeping on Mahomes, but I wasn't really like drafting a ton of him either. But even without Tyreek Hill, he can still be that guy. He had, I think, like over 25 points per game last year, or like just shy of 25 points per game last year. He was absolutely insane. If we look at as well, just when it comes down to Mahomes and Josh Allen, and we see the highest fantasy points per game seasons over the last 10 years, or last 5 years. So since 2018, Mahomes has 3, 2018, 2020, and 2022. Josh Allen has 3, 2022, 2020, 2021. Now, of course, Jalen Hurts doesn't have as big of a sample as those guys, but when we're talking about quarterback, especially this year quarterback, where we're taking these guys in the 3rd round, we've already seen Mahomes establish, that 26-plus point per game ceiling. We've already seen Josh Allen establish a 25-plus point per game ceiling. I think they give you the highest floor in this range and then also give you maximum upside here. Now, again, Mahomes isn't really going to give you the same rushing upside as Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. He's not going to rush for like 1,000 yards or even 700 yards, but his throwing is insane. Like he is, obviously the best quarterback in the league, or I don't know. I think you can say that without people coming at your throat. But he was the MVP last year. He had over 5,000 throwing yards, over 40+ passing touchdowns, and that was without Tyreek Hill. So any weapons you give him on his team, he can go out there, make it happen. And the important thing to note with him is that he's not a complete zero in the rushing game either. He had over 350 rushing yards last year. He had 4 touchdowns on the ground. He had the 8th most red zone carries, the 7th most rushing touchdowns last year, and the 11th most expected rushing points per game per RotoViz. Now, expected points per game is just based on your volume, so your rush attempts, your red zone carries, all of that. How much rush points per game should you be adding on the ground? He was 11th, which wasn't really that bad. Now, our QB3 here is going to be Jalen Hurts. Again, I truly cannot stress enough, like, those are my rankings. Allen 31, Mahomes 32, Jalen Hurts 33. Like, literally back to back to back. So if you want to have this all jumbled, you want to have Hurts at 1 or Hurts at 2 and Allen at 1, like, I truly, truly do not care. These guys are all elite, all in their own ways as well. Now, Jalen Hurts, QB1 in points per game last year, 25.6 points per game on the back of 13 rushing touchdowns. Now, I think you'd be inclined to say, like, that probably regresses to the mean, that 13 rushing touchdowns, but this new, like, QB sneak thing that the Eagles have been doing, I don't imagine they'll shy away from it until the league makes them do so. So I think 10+ rushing touchdowns, 12+ rushing touchdowns, something you can still pencil him in for. And with Hurts, the issue with him is that his passing ceiling isn't really up there with Mahomes and with Allen, which to me is just a little bit more sticky than your production on the ground. He had 22 passing touchdowns last year, only 16 the year before that. In a perfect world, he's competing for like 30+. Again, he gives you enough on the ground to make up for it, but year to year, it being more like predictable and sticky, you'd hope to see the passing improve, which it did improve last year. It could take another step forward, and I mean, we're just seeing like this is going to be the 3rd year of him starting for an entire season, so it wouldn't shock me if it does take another step forward. Like, and if it does, and he can challenge for, like 30+ passing TDs, 10+ rushing TDs, we're talking about a guy that can rival, that season where, I mean, Lamar Jackson had a 28.1 point per game season, like clearing the field by like 1.3, 1.4 in terms of best point per game season. And that's not even just in the last 5 years, but all time. Lamar Jackson's 28.11 point per game season in 2019 led all quarterbacks ever. Jalen Hurts has that in his upside case. He has A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, a bunch of guys who are super, super efficient. That touchdown number could easily go from 22 to like 30, but it might take away from his rushing touchdown total as well. So then after that, we have a tier break. Those guys I think are pretty consensus top 3. We have Lamar Jackson in a tier of his own as a stopgap between like the true elite quarterbacks and then kind of your like high-end QB1s in the B tier. We have Lamar Jackson, who has unmatched upside, and we just brought it up, but like the same thing again. He has the best QB1 season we've ever seen, and even if you want to take out his 2019 season, he has been super consistent, or not even just super consistent, but his points per game has been amazing even after that year. So since 2020, again, not including his MVP season, Lamar Jackson, 2020, 2021, 2022, his points per game over those years, 21.5 points per game behind just Josh Allen, Mahomes, Kyler Murray. And you would say probably in the last 3 seasons, since that 2019 season, he hasn't been all that great for fantasy. He's been putting up points, and that's in what's been a pretty prehistoric offense under Greg Roman. Of course, Lamar's been dealing with injuries, but when he's been on the field in this Greg Roman offense, it has been just slow, low pass attempts, right? We see up top here, Greg Roman offensive ranks in Baltimore, 28th in 2022 in terms of pass attempts, 9th in 2021, but I think Lamar was hurt for a good chunk of that year, then 32nd, neutral pace also slow. So the reason to get excited about Lamar is because he now gets thrusted into a modern offense where they're going to run more plays, they're going to crank up his passing volume. A lot of his rushes, of course, some of them are designed, but a lot of them are scrambles as well, so it's not like his rushing upside is going to go way down like this is Lamar Jackson. But when you jack up the pass attempts and you jack up the neutral pace and you just give him more plays, the ceiling is kind of insane. Like, again, that 2019 season, they were 27th in neutral pace, 32nd in pass attempts, and he still led the league in passing touchdowns, which is just absolutely insane. So we get Todd Monken. He comes in this year. They fire Greg Roman. Obviously, we're not expecting top 5 in pass attempts like he was in 2018 and 2017. The numbers on the bottom, Todd Monken's offensive ranks when he was calling plays in Tampa Bay, they were top 5 in 2 of the 3 years in pass attempts, top 11 in neutral pace all 3 years. So there's going to be more plays ran. They're probably going to be, I would say, anywhere from like high teens to low 20s in pass attempts, which is really exciting because, again, his MVP season, they had no 1,000-yard receiver. He led the league in touchdowns, but even though he had like the least pass attempts among all of the like starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and then on top of that, he now has his best receiving room, just weaponry he's ever had in the NFL, Lamar Jackson, where now they bring in first-round pick Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, first-round pick from a couple years ago. They sign Odell Beckham Jr. off the streets. They have Mark Andrews. They have two pretty nice young tight ends in Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. You have healthy J.K. Dobbins now. This whole offense, I think, can really smash this year. We've talked about them in my must-draft offenses video, but Lamar Jackson's somebody that I am drafting a lot of, but the market's kind of catching up on him, I will be honest. I loved him a lot more at that 4-5 turn. Now he's more of a 3-4 turn pick. That is steep, but again, to me, he is just a small tier from those top 3 quarterbacks, just based on what we've seen, what we can kind of expect from this offense in 2023. After that, we have our B tier, and again, these are just like strong QB1s, just a small tier break. Still high-end QB1s. I think a good chunk of these guys have QB1 overall upside as well, and that would be Justin Fields, who I think has QB1 overall upside. He's my QB5 in my rankings, and last year, he was second behind just Jalen Hurts in expected rushing points per game. He became just the 3rd quarterback ever to hit a 1,000-plus yard rushing season as a quarterback. It is Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, Justin Fields. Pretty wild list to be a part of. Now, last year, he had 20.5 points per game. He was the QB5 in points per game last year. And he feels like a guy where 20.5 points per game in your second year is amazing. But he feels like a guy where we can look at Josh Allen, who going into year 3 had like a couple 18-point-per-game seasons and absolutely erupted. Same thing with Jalen Hurts last year, where year 3 he absolutely erupts. Both of those guys, Jalen Hurts gets A.J. Brown, Josh Allen gets Stephon Diggs, and now we have Justin Fields heading into year 3. They trade for DJ Moore, and this is a passing offense that's expected to be bad and not pass the ball a ton, but Justin Fields takes that step forward. There is a lot of upside here for him to be an absolute stud for fantasy, especially because, again, they're going to want to run the ball with Justin Fields. They invested in running back in the draft and free agency, but they did just get DJ Moore. They spent a pretty high pick on Claypool last year, and this is a defense that's not going to hold on to any leads. If we look here, this was last year. After they traded away Roquan Smith, their defense was just absolutely awful. From that point on, they allowed the most points per game in the NFL, 30.7, and it just bred these shootouts with Justin Fields where he would just have to go back and forth and back and forth. Like I think week 9, like him and Cole Kmet were just absolutely unstoppable. We're going to see a lot of these game scripts this year where the Bears offense is going to get explosive and humming, and their defense just isn't really going to be able to hold on to that lead, and it's going to challenge them to pass the ball more than a lot of us are expecting, to be honest. And then also, on top of that, we should see some efficiency here from Justin Fields. He could take a step forward. He wasn't even really that good as a thrower last year, but as a rusher, he was amazing. If he can take a step forward, he was somebody that was honestly a lot more accurate than a guy like Josh Allen coming out of college. We could see Justin Fields take a huge step forward and do some big things in 2023. I think also, I think his tight ends are a little underrated. Like Kmet's pretty good. Robert Tonyan's pretty good. Exciting stuff with Justin Fields. They invested in the offensive line in the NFL draft as well. Fields is somebody that on a week-to-week basis can just give you such a crazy spike week, like 40-plus point games. I think he had 2 40-plus point games last year. I want to say Mahomes and Josh Allen have just like 1 40-plus point game apiece in their entire careers. It's pretty crazy what he can do in terms of giving you like week-to-week spike weeks. It's just a matter of him being consistent over an entire year. And I think even like that 20.5 point per game number for Fields is a little bit underselling him because beginning of the season, they weren't doing as many designed rushes as they were once the Roquan Smith trade happened. And the last 2 or 3 games of the season, he was hurt, was maybe not going to play, and that brought his points per game down. But there was a solid stretch of the season where he was that guy and was just absolutely dominating. Now, after Justin Fields, we have Joe Burrow at QB6 here. And Joe Burrow probably gets slept on too much. You can make the case that he's maybe too low on here, but this is honestly the highest I could reasonably put him. But this is a guy who has back-to-back 30-plus passing touchdown seasons. He has back-to-back over 20-point-per-game seasons. He's behind just Hurts, Allen, Mahomes in points per game over the last 2 seasons. I think that is right here. Yeah, over the last 2 years, Burrow's behind just Hurts, Mahomes, and Allen in points per game. He's been absolutely amazing. They finally cranked the pass attempts up last year too, Zach Taylor, where they were 6 in pass attempts per game last year. They should still be pass heavy. Jamar Chase was even like out for a good chunk last year with like that weird injury that he had. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins being there the entire season sort of gives this offense a nice passing efficiency floor, just with Burrow to T to Chase. And they might even lean on the passing game even more so when we talk about Joe Mixon, who, like, I don't know if he's going to get suspended or arrested or what's up. He'll probably just play this. Like, at this point, he might just play the full 17 games. But there's a chance that they're without Joe Mixon and their backfield is like Travion Williams and Chase Brown, and they just pass the ball to win games. So you have even that much more of a ceiling. And I think the important thing to note with Burrow rushed a ton in college. Like, he had a lot of design rushes and read options for a guy in Joe Burrow that you wouldn't really think is all that athletic. And he took it easy after the ACL tear. So his second year, he was like a statue quarterback. But that bounced all the way back last year. He was 8th in expected points per game in the rushing game among all quarterbacks, which was actually ahead of Patrick Mahomes, who has been known to add like 303 touchdowns on the ground, 300 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. And I mean, like, Burrow was right in this area of like Kyler and Deshaun Watson in terms of expected points per game in the rushing game. He was also top 10 in red zone carries per game and top 10 in rushing touchdowns. So that's really exciting as a guy that we've kind of like, in your head, you kind of think of Joe Burrow as a pocket guy. Of course, he's not a Lamar or a Hurts or an Allen, but he gives you a similar rushing point per game as a guy like Mahomes. And Burrow, I mean, after Mahomes is one of the best passers in the league, has 2 of the best weapons in Higgins and Chase. So, like, if Burrow ever hits like a 40-plus passing touchdown year and like wins an MVP, he'll give you enough with his legs that he could compete for like a QB1 overall season. At QB7 after that, we have Justin Herbert, who, after I looked into it, like, I'm very forgiving of what his year was last year. 17.1 points per game as the QB15, just as like a awful injury by his standards after a pretty crazy first 2 years. But I think you can kind of just chalk it up to injury. He tore his labrum in the preseason, and then he fractured like a rib in week 2. And it was just clear he wasn't himself. He was like sort of playing differently and more timid, and his rushing expected points per game went all the way down. But when we look at what he did in his first 2 seasons, again, I'm kind of just wiping last season away. His first 2 years, like, I don't think people really appreciate it, were really special. His first 2 years, he averaged 23.1 points per game, which, again, first 2 years in the NFL, 23.1 points per game. That's higher than what Justin Fields was at last year. It's higher than what, like, Lamar Jackson's 2 or 3 year average has been. 23 points per game is really insane for a quarterback in his first 2 years. He had over 30-plus passing touchdowns in each of those years. In terms of first 2 seasons ever by a quarterback points per game, it is the second all-time behind just Mahomes. And Mahomes is skewed because he didn't start many games in his first year. It's ahead of Cam Newton, who had like the craziest rookie year of all time, ahead of Deshaun Watson, who had one of the craziest rookie years of all time, Kyler Murray. And this is a guy who doesn't even really scramble like a Cam Newton in Justin Herbert. So again, he was like a statue last year and wasn't great because of injury, but in his first 2 years, he was balling out over 23 points per game in his first 2 years. And then he was also giving you about 3.3 expected points per game on the ground, which was 8th in rushing expected points per game in those 2020 and 2021 seasons. So really nice. It was ahead of guys like Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes in that area. And it's right on par, like when we were talking about, Burrow and Mahomes giving you 300 rushing yards and like 3 rushing touchdowns. Justin Herbert also fits that build. He was just like hampered last year. So that's going to come forward. He's going to have more rushing. He's going to have, he's going to be healthier. And then we also get the Chargers adding Quentin Johnson to this receiving core. And then you get Kellen Moore calling these plays, where Kellen Moore, he's had some Dak injuries he's had to deal with, but even then, 3 of his 4 seasons with Dallas, he has been top 6 in scoring offense and top 10 in pass attempts. So this is going to be a team, passes the ball a ton, looks to score a ton. There's playmakers everywhere. Quentin Johnson, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, playmakers everywhere. Offensive line should be good with, I think Rashawn Slater was hurt down the stretch last year. Just really exciting stuff. I think Herbert has a case for QB1 overall as well. Like, obviously not to take him there, but I think if things really broke right for him and he was to just like absolutely go crazy this season, Herbert could be a guy, especially right now where he's the cheapest of all of these quarterbacks listed. Herbert's one of my favorite values in drafts right now. Now, after that, we have C tier, which are just your back-end QB1s. And at QB8, we have Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, I was a lot more excited about it until I sort of dug in. He was a QB12 in points per game last year. He had 17.9 points per game. It was a huge step forward for him. The issue for him is he needs another step forward to like truly pay off. Again, that was like his breakout year, and it was just QB12. You can't really expect anything more from a rushing standpoint from him. He was already rushing a ton. Like, he was in that Mahomes, Joe Burrow area in terms of rushing. So he had 25 passing touchdowns last year. They were already like top 10 in pass attempts. So kind of what you need a step forward with is for him to get to like 35 plus passing touchdowns. Now, I don't think that's out of the question. This is the best quarterback prospect we've seen since Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck had like about 18 points per game in his first 2 seasons, and his highest passing touchdown total was 23, right? Trevor Lawrence, 25. And then it was that 3rd season for Andrew Luck. I haven't done any research, but I kind of want to do some research on year 3 breakout for quarterbacks. Like, now we've seen it with Josh Allen. We've seen it with Jalen Hurts last year. I mean, of course, we've seen year 2 breakouts with Lamar and Mahomes, but year 3 seems kind of like a sweet spot as well, where Andrew Luck went from 18 points per game and 23 passing touchdowns, as like his highest totals in his first 2 years, to year 3, where he was the QB1 in points per game and had 40 passing touchdowns. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is going to have 40 passing touchdowns, but he is, a generational quarterback prospect. Took a huge step forward this year. 2nd year in this Doug Peterson offense, they add a true difference-making wide receiver in Calvin Ridley. There's an upside, ceiling case for him to hit like 35 plus passing touchdowns and be, like a top 6 quarterback in fantasy this year. I think that is in his range. And even if it's not, you're taking him as a back-end QB2, and he probably ends up somewhere in like the 18 to 19 points per game and doesn't absolutely sink your season or anything. Now, after that, we have Deshaun Watson, who we've talked a good chunk about this offseason. We have been talking a lot about this Browns offense. I love this Browns offense. I love a bounce back for Deshaun Watson in this passing offense, especially because when we look at this offense, they're kind of telling us what direction they want to go in. This is Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, play caller for the Cleveland Browns. He's had 4 years as a play caller. Last year, he had his highest team pass attempt ranking he's ever had in his entire career. I think that's a sign of what he wants this offense to look like, and the front office coaching staff has given us, a signal that that's the direction they're heading in, where they, they grab their Elijah Moore, they draft Cedric Tillman, they go out here and they let Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson walk. They're not investing into the running game like they used to. It seems like they are a team that wants to open it up, pass the ball more. I've read this quote probably a million times now, but Matthew Berry, when he was at the Combine, there's a lot of buzz that the Cleveland Browns wanted to pass more. He said, look for the Browns out of speed wide receiver this offseason, go with Amari Cooper, which was Elijah Moore. They're going to want to open this offense, go 5 wide, pass a lot. This is going to be Deshaun Watson's offense, not Nick Chubb's. And they kind of go into detail on, the last game of the year and kind of what that told us about what they want to do. But you can bet that the Cleveland Browns, I highly doubt that they're going to be bottom 5 in pass attempts like they were 2019 to 2021. I think they're going to pass the ball a lot more, and we should see Deshaun Watson bounce back. Like, Deshaun Watson, I'm not saying that he's going to return to what he was doing in 2017 through 2020, but last year was the first time he's ever had under a 60% completion percentage. It was the first time he's ever been under 7.8 yards per attempt. It was the second time he's ever been even just under 8 yards per attempt, which is insane. He has always been someone that has just been uber efficient. He's just 27. It's not like he's fallen off or anything. Like, we look here, he is among active leaders in the NFL, even with a pretty awful season last year, 2nd in adjusted yards per attempt, which is just like your efficiency on a per throw basis. It's Mahomes, it's Watson, it's Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow. Like, this is a very good list to be a part of. Deshaun Watson's always been very good at getting as much as he possibly can out of his pass attempts. He's always been monster efficient, and even, of course he's had DeAndre Hopkins in his career, but he hasn't had, the craziest setup of all time. He had Bill O'Brien. This past year, he was 28th among quarterbacks in adjusted yards per attempt, with 6 adjusted yards per attempt. His career average, even with that year factored in, is 8.35. It would be shocking to me if his efficiency stayed bottom 5, around 6 yards, adjusted yards per attempt. I just think that there's no way. There's just no way. His career average is just too high. Maybe he's broken from, the scandals or whatever, but 1 year after playing just 6 games, I'll be betting on that bounce back at QB9. He's somebody that can be, like your, in terms of passing stuff, kind of in that Burrow, Herbert, Mahomes area of just being an absolute monster. Like, even if we look here at, touchdown percentage, he's up there in terms of touchdown percentage at 5.8% ahead of guys like Burrow and Dak and all of them. Touchdown percentage, adjusted yards per attempt, he gets touchdowns and yards efficiently is the easiest way that I could put it. For his entire career, it's been that way. Now, after that, we have our QB10. I don't think you guys are going to love this, but this is where I'm going to put Anthony Richardson. Now, remember, this is assuming, a one quarterback league. If you take a QB 10 in like the 9th round or wherever Anthony Richardson's going to go, or 8th, 9th, 10th round, and you whiff on him, it's not like the end of the world. Like, I think one of my best teams last year had Trey Lance, where I took him like in the 8th round, and he was just a 0 for you, right? Of course, you can go to waivers. Also, if it's best ball and it's underdog, you can go to waivers. You can, stream your quarterbacks. It's not the end of the world. So I want to take an upside swing on Anthony Richardson once we get to this price point. Now, again, I get he's a rookie, and that feels scary, right? Even Justin Fields wasn't great as a rookie. Like, Trevor Lawrence wasn't great as a rookie. But we've seen rookie quarterbacks, like, pay off for fantasy. Like, it's not that rare of a thing. Like, these are your best point-per-game seasons from rookie quarterbacks. The QB12 last year was 17.9 points per game. I have Anthony Richardson in this, like, QB10, QB12 area. They're all back-to-back. And 17.9 points per game would be all the way down to Russell Wilson. So, like, Russell Wilson, Burrow, like, even, like, a guy like Baker and Mariota have had, like, serviceable seasons. You also have monster upside with, like, Cam Newton, 24.1 points per game, Deshaun at 25 points per game, Herbert at 22.9, RG3 at 21.5. There's been plenty of rookie quarterbacks come into the NFL and be absolutely monsters for fantasy. Now, when we talk about Anthony Richardson, the reason I'm so excited is we have Shane Steichen, who just coached Jalen Hurts for back-to-back over 20 point per game seasons at quarterback. And that's with the Jalen Hurts, who just recently became a good passer. Before that, he had over 20 points per game as like a top 6 quarterback with just 16 passing touchdowns. Like, the beauty of the Shane Steichen offense, and you're going to see with Quentin Nelson up front and Jonathan Taylor behind, they're going to do the same thing that the Eagles did last year, where they're going to come in close, they're going to have 2 running backs behind, and they're going to push, Anthony Richardson over the goal line. Anthony Richardson can challenge this year for like 1,000+ rushing yards, 10+ rushing touchdowns, maybe more like 750+ rushing yards and like 10+ rushing touchdowns. But I think that the rushing upside and the rushing touchdown upside is there to the point where we don't need him to be a plus passer. Like, he could pass for like 14 passing touchdowns and still pay off as like a top 10 quarterback in fantasy just from what he can do on the ground. Now, the thing that's exciting to me is you're going to take, again, the Shane Steichen offense, you're going to swap out Jalen Hurts, put in Anthony Richardson. Now, of course, Jalen Hurts is a lot more polished. Jalen Hurts is probably more accurate. He's a better passer of the football. When we talk about these Shane Steichen read option and short yard situation packages that he pulls out, we are replacing Jalen Hurts, who, again, you look at Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a big boy, big body, lays truck sticks on people. We're swapping in Anthony Richardson, who is 6'4" to Jalen Hurts 6'1". He has 22 pounds on Jalen Hurts. He runs 4.4s instead of 4.59. He jumps higher, has a 40-inch vertical to Jalen Hurts' 35-inch vertical. He is bigger, faster, stronger, jumps higher than Jalen Hurts. When we're talking about for fantasy, rushing touchdowns, rushing yards equal more points than passing yards, passing touchdowns. Give me the guy in his fine-tailored offense, 4 rushing touchdowns for quarterbacks with a decent offensive line in year one. Anthony Richardson, the sky, like, to be honest with you, is truly the limit. Again, he doesn't really need to sniff 20 passing touchdowns to get you there. Now, after that, we have our last quarterback in this tier. We have Dak Prescott. And if you want to put Dak Prescott, because he's been so consistent or whatever, over Anthony Richardson, you can. It's just tough for me. Like, to me, the ceiling isn't really there. When we look at Dak Prescott, we now have back-to-back seasons of him being 20th or worse in carries per game and rushing touchdowns. He's not really scrambling at this point. He's just a pocket passer. He was QB 13 last year. You can say that he was dealing with injuries, so I'll give him a little bit of a slight pass on that. But, like, the difference between Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins these days isn't that crazy. Like, Kirk Cousins has been throwing for over 30 passing touchdowns. Dak Prescott's no longer running all that much, so he's kind of fading back into that Kirk Cousins area. I'll have him in a tier ahead for now this year, but I'm honestly open to moving Dak as like the QB1 in this next tier. I just don't think that he has the efficiency that Deshaun Watson has, and Deshaun Watson already proved last year he's in that, like, I would say I also didn't give Trevor Lawrence enough credit, but I would say, like, of course you have like your Allen, your Hurts, and your Lamar and your Fields as like just crazy rushers, but I like Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, Lawrence, Deshaun are all pretty good scramblers. Dak Prescott as a rushing quarterback, or just rushing output for fantasy, is probably a tier below that in like your Kirk Cousins, like Goff, Garoppolo type area. He's closer to the Goff, Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins than he is your like Mahomes and Joe Burrows, which is pretty crazy to hear from Dak, but he is getting old. He's having like injuries and everything. It kind of does make sense. Now, when we talk about this offense, they're also removing Kellen Moore. They're going to run the ball more. Dak Prescott's a pretty efficient thrower, but now they're going to, again, run the ball more. They're going to play slower now without Kellen Moore. It's just not all that exciting. Now, when we go to D tier, you can have these guys rearranged however you'd like. I don't think you guys are going to really like how I have them arranged, but at QB 12, we have Daniel Jones. What it comes down to for him with me is he was one of just 5 quarterbacks last year with over 5 expected points per game in the rushing game. So that was Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones in that list, which is pretty exciting. He had 18.4 points per game last year as the QB 10 on just 15 passing touchdowns. So he's kind of similar to like last year's Jalen Hurts and kind of this year's Justin Fields, where the rushing is there, but with only 15 passing touchdowns, you got to take a step forward as a passer to really unlock that next ceiling. And I'm like kind of okay betting on that in year 2 of Dable's offense. You now have Darren Waller coming in. You have Jalen Hyatt, Paris Campbell. Have anybody else? All right, I just coughed my lungs out there for a second, but I guess you can include Jamison Crowder if you'd like. But he should take a little bit of a step forward. And if you go back, his best passing season was actually his season as a rookie, where he had 24 passing touchdowns. I did the math. If he had 24 passing touchdowns instead of 15 this year, of course you can't do the exact math because it would take away his rushing touchdown. But let's just say he had 24 passing touchdowns, which isn't that crazy. He would have been at 20.7 points per game as the QB 5 in points per game ahead of Justin Fields. So with Daniel Jones, you just need him to take a step forward as a passer, and he can give you a pretty good finish within the context of this offense. I don't know that the passing will get there, and even the passing does get there, the rushing might come down. So you kind of need to thread this needle with Daniel Jones. But again, we're talking about a guy who is kind of the last, like, actual. I struggle calling Daniel Jones a Konami QB, but he is. I would call him closer to your Josh Allen, Lamar, Hurts, Justin Fields than he is to your like Burrow, Herbert, Mahomes types of like 3 expected points per game in the rushing category. Now after that, we have Aaron Rodgers as my QB 13, and this is what it comes down to. All right, this is kind of what it comes down to in terms of how I'm looking at these quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, his upside case, he already has the rushing floor or the rushing ceiling. Now his passing has to get there. But if we're talking about pocket quarterbacks, it's tough to hit that ceiling, and the rest of these guys are pretty much pocket quarterbacks. So I'd like to just bet on Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers has access to that passing ceiling no one else has if he can, tap into those MVP seasons he had in 2020 and 2021. And those 2 seasons were with offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. He's coming with Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. So it should be a perfect scenario for him to, try and get back to form when he had those QB8 and QB4 finishes with back-to-back MVPs. We've seen Breeze and Tom Brady as well past their age 39 season, which Aaron Rodgers is going to be like 39 and a half this year. We've seen them have 20-plus point per game seasons as quarterbacks, which are good enough for top 6 to 8 numbers, and we're getting Aaron Rodgers in the teens here. So really not that bad. And the reason why I say that Aaron Rodgers has access to it and others don't is because, again, if we look at these efficiency numbers, Aaron Rodgers, second highest touchdown percent. So that means, touchdown divided by attempts. So he can score touchdowns on a low amount of attempts, and he can give you yards on a low amount of attempts. 3rd among active quarterbacks in adjusted yards per attempt. And in those 2020 and 2021 MVP seasons where he was a top 8 fantasy quarterback, they were just 24th and 16th in pass attempts those years. So again, Aaron Rodgers doesn't need volume to pay off as a quarterback in fantasy, which is why I have him this high, because there's nobody else that even really can compete with these touchdown percentages and with these adjusted yards per attempt. Like, again, it's really just Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. I guess if you want to say that Russell Wilson has a similar upside as Aaron Rodgers, you can, but I think it's just a thinner needle to thread with him. Now, the Jets, obviously, they won't be top 10 in pass attempts this year with Nathaniel Hackett and then with this really good defense they have. But, again, Rodgers had his monster seasons outside the top 15 in pass attempts. It wouldn't be all that hard to see him just be really efficient with low volume. He has, much better weapons than last year, where last year, like, Christian Watson was out for stretches, Romeo Doubs was out for stretches. His whole supporting cast was pretty rough last year. The supporting cast in New York isn't, like, amazing, but you have a bona fide wide receiver 1 in Garrett Wilson. You have, like, Corey Davis, McCole Hardman, Allen Lazard, like, Tyler Conklin. You have guys. You have Breece Hall in the backfield to kind of open things up with play action. And you also have, like, I hate even mentioning this because this is really more narrative than I like to include when I make these videos, but Aaron Rodgers is the type of guy where he takes things personally, and, you know, like him getting left in the draft room until pick, like, whatever it was, and then he kind of had that as a chip on his shoulder the entire time in his career. The Packers kind of, like, moving on from him and, like, taking Jordan Love and things being kind of sour on the way out, I think that's going to give him that extra motivation to be really good with the Jets and maybe give you one of those, like, Tom Brady on the Buccaneers seasons where he was just really good, even as a pocket passer. Now, after that, we have QB 14. We have Kirk Cousins, and if you want to put him higher, you can. Like, this guy probably has the highest floor of the group. Like, we just look at his stats the last 3 years. He hasn't finished outside the top 12 quarterbacks. He has passed. I mean, last year he had 29 passing touchdowns, but before that he had 30-plus passing touchdowns. The rushing will never be there, but, you know, you have Kevin O'Connell, who's been a good play caller so far. They had the third pass attempts per game last year. Kevin O'Connell has been throwing the ball a lot. He has Justin Jefferson to throw to. You add in Jordan Addison. It's just tough because, again, Kirk Cousins isn't going to give you the same efficiency as an Aaron Rodgers, and doesn't have the rushing ceiling of Daniel Jones to, like, crack it to the top 6 quarterbacks in fantasy. But again, he's like as good as bet as any to be a back-end QB1. It's just a matter of where you value that. So I have him at QB 14. Again, you can make a case for him to be a little bit higher than that. Now, people aren't going to like this one. QB 15, we have Tua. And hear me out on Tua for a second. We're playing in one quarterback leagues. Of course, it doesn't really matter if your quarterback goes down. The issue for me with Tua is he doesn't have the Anthony Richardson, like, game-breaking upside to offset the downside. Like, Tua is so fragile. He came into and I hate pulling the injury risk card. You guys know I usually have no problem taking on injury risk, and you know, if everything, like, looks okay. The issue with Tua is he came to the league with injury questions. He's never played more than 13 games in his 3 seasons now. He's contemplated retirement. He's like a concussion away from retiring. It's just tough. It's like he could be sweet, you know, for the first 5 weeks, and then he gets hit the wrong way, and it's like maybe there's a concussion, and it's like you're without this quarterback for the rest of the year, and you just spent a 10th round, like a 9th round pick on Tua, and his ceiling is only, like, you know, like just scraping 20 points per game. Like, he was just scraping 20 points per game last year on, like, league in adjusted yards per attempt and league and, like, efficiency, all of that. You have to bet on him to be, like, an outlier efficiency-wise, which, you know, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill could drag him there again to low 20-point per game, but I just don't know that the ceiling is there. The rushing ceiling obviously isn't there. 1.1 expected rushing points per game last year was in your Jared Goff, Matt Ryan area, so you need him to have, like, an MVP season to, like, really give you a ceiling that offsets the low floor of, like, him getting hit the wrong way. Like, the Dolphins now also invested in a Mike White, which means they might just be more cautious with Tua this year, where even if he doesn't have a concussion or something, he gets hit the wrong way, they're just like, you know what, Mike White's a serviceable backup. We're playing the Cardinals this week. Let's just roll out Mike White. So I think that there's some added downside, and I think the equation isn't just simply will Tua be good this year. I think there's some other things you kind of have to factor in. But again, as these tiers work, if you want to put Tua at the top of this tier, you can. I just have a difficult time doing so myself. Now, our last quarterback here, and I think I would probably have, like, Russell Wilson right here next to Geno, but Geno Smith used a QB 8 in points per game last year. The Seahawks were 8th in pass rate over expectation last year. They passed the ball a bunch. Geno threw for 30-plus pass touchdowns, which was insane. He joined Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Joe Burrow as the only 3 quarterbacks to pass for over 30 passing touchdowns. Absurd. The Seahawks go out here and they draft Jackson Smith-Njigba, and the Seahawks now probably have, like, the best 3 wide receiver set in the NFL, where they have Metcalf, Lockett, and JSN. There should be a lot of efficiency, right? These are, you know, not JSN, but the other 2 are high ADOT, solid efficiency type players. So, like, there's a lot here where these 3 wide receivers could just kind of drag Geno Smith to, like, another top 8 finish. And that's really exciting. The offense is strong as a whole too. Like, they got the I think the guy's name is Abraham Lucas. I might be butchering that, but I think it's Abraham Lucas on one side. They got not Ekwonu. Who the heck did they get on the other side? Charles Cross. They have a solid offensive line. I think Noah Fant and Will Dissly are, like, underrated as a tight end tandem. They have Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker in the backfield. They have, like, the best 3 wide receivers set in the NFL. Like, even if you don't really believe in Geno Smith a ton, sometimes the supporting cast just drags you forward. I think that's one of these situations with Geno Smith. Now, that is going to do it for us today. I'll keep you here for a second so you can kind of see the entire list of quarterbacks, but hope you enjoyed. This is kind of just how I see the quarterback landscape right now. Again, between now and August, this is probably going to change a little bit, but I think this is a rough idea of where I'm at. Let me know what your thoughts are. Who's too high? Who's too low? Let me have it in the comments. I know you guys, like to get at me with these rankings videos, but as always, if you want to see the entire rankings list again, I have, like, my top My top 215 is out. My top 30 quarterbacks, top 30 tight ends, top 90 wide receivers, top 65 running backs for seasonal leagues. I have plans very soon to like tier them, to give out like my ideal rounds for each player, to make it so you can upload the rankings to Underdog. Again, if any of you guys out there are like tech nerds that know how to upload rankings to Underdog and like get player IDs into a Google Sheet in an easy way, let me know. But that's all going to be coming in the future. You can find all of that patreon.com/Ron Stewart, along with like a billion other things where we'll have like waiver wire articles in season. We'll have a Dynasty Rankings update, not this weekend, but next weekend. We'll have, RS grades are already housed on there. My Dynasty Rankings are already housed on there. My rookie rankings are already housed on there. All of that and more, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. It is the best value out right now. And if you haven't already, one last thing, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy, promo code Ron. You use it. I have a link in the description and a link down below in the comment section. You click it. It'll take you to Underdog. It'll use my promo code. It'll match your deposit up to $100. You can hop in there, do best ball drafts all summer long. I don't know when this video is going to be posted. It's probably going to be posted after this stream, but I'm about to go live with Hayden Wings today. We're going to hop on Underdog, do a stream, talk draft strategy, have some fun with us this summer. Hop on Underdog Fantasy. It's a great time. You got the Underdog Cardio Club going on as well, where it's not too late to join that, or you can get a bunch of perks if you draft teams while you're doing cardio and you post it to Twitter. A bunch of really cool stuff going on over there. Check out Underdog Fantasy. But as always, I appreciate y'all, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoenaed for misdemeanors. Dreamer, held back asses, Loki still a zen. And I still shake a boat squat.